What happened to the people who shared the most infamous name in history? When Adolf Hitler took his own life in that Berlin bunker on April 30th, 1945, the world celebrated the end of Nazi Germany. But what about his family? His siblings, his nephews, his cousins, people who carried the Hitler name into a world that would never forgive it? Today, you're about to discover one of World War II's most closely guarded secrets: the shocking fates of Hitler's surviving relatives. Some fled to distant continents. Others lived in hiding for decades. And a few, well, they made choices that will absolutely astound you. Welcome back to World War Chronicles, where we uncover the untold stories of the Second World War. I'm your host, and if you're fascinated by the hidden histories that shaped our world, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Before we begin, a crucial disclaimer. Everything you'll hear today is based on documented historical sources, declassified government files, and verified testimonies. We've cross-referenced multiple sources to bring you the most accurate account possible of these remarkable and often tragic stories. So buckle up, because the truth about Hitler's family after 1945 is stranger than any fiction Hollywood could imagine. Let's start with who we're talking about. Adolf Hitler came from a surprisingly large family, though death and estrangement had thinned their ranks by 1945. First, his younger sister Paula, the only full sibling to survive into adulthood. Born in 1896, she was actually closer to Adolf than most people realized. She worked as a secretary and had remained loyal to her brother throughout the war, even receiving monthly payments from his personal funds. Then there was Alois Hitler Jr., Adolf's half-brother from their father's second marriage. Alois was actually older than Adolf, born in 1882. Here's what's shocking. He had spent time in prison for theft and had a troubled relationship with his infamous half-brother. But that criminal background might have been exactly what saved his life. Angela Raubel, another half-sister, had served as Adolf's housekeeper at his Berchtesgaden retreat. She knew Hitler's personal habits better than almost anyone alive. But Angela had her own dark secrets. Her daughter Jelly had died under mysterious circumstances in Hitler's apartment in 1931, creating a rift that never fully healed. But here's where it gets really interesting. The family wasn't just in Germany. Hitler's nephew William Patrick Hitler was living in America, of all places. And he had made a decision in 1944 that would shock you to your core. William Patrick Hitler had joined the United States Navy to fight against his own uncle. That's right. A Hitler was serving in the American military, fighting against Nazi Germany. But William's story gets even more incredible, and we'll dive deep into that later. By April 1945, as Berlin fell and Hitler retreated to his bunker, these family members were scattered across 3 continents. None of them knew that within days, they would become the most hunted people on Earth, not for what they had done, but for the name they carried. The Allies had lists. The Soviets had questions, and everyone wanted to know, what did Hitler's family know? And more importantly, where are they hiding? Picture this. You wake up one morning and your last name is suddenly the most hated in the world. That's exactly what happened to Hitler's surviving relatives. Within hours of Germany's surrender, Allied intelligence agencies launched Operation Bernhard. Not the counterfeiting operation you might know, but a secret manhunt for Hitler's family members. Paula Hitler, Adolf's sister, was the first to be captured. On May 26, 1945, American intelligence officers arrived at her small apartment in Berchtesgaden. But here's what's remarkable. Paula wasn't hiding. The interrogation transcripts, declassified only in 2009, reveal something extraordinary. Paula told her American interrogators, and I quote, "I am not ashamed of my brother, but I cannot understand how he could do such terrible things." For 6 months, Paula was held in various detention centers while Allied investigators tried to determine what she knew about Nazi war crimes. The conclusion? She knew virtually nothing about the Holocaust or her brother's political activities. She had been kept deliberately in the dark. But Alois Hitler Jr.'s story was far more dramatic. When American forces reached his neighborhood in Hamburg, they found his apartment empty. Neighbors reported he had vanished 3 days before the surrender. Where did he go? Alois had done something brilliant. Using his criminal connections from his younger days, he obtained forged papers identifying him as Alois Hitler, with an I instead of an I. One letter change that bought him months of anonymity. British intelligence finally tracked him down in December 1945, working as a waiter in a small restaurant in the British-occupied zone. But when they arrested him, Alois surprised everyone by immediately confessing his real identity. Why? Because he had calculated that cooperation was his only path to survival. The British interrogation lasted 3 weeks. Alois revealed family secrets that had never been documented. He told them about Adolf's violent temper as a child, about their father's brutal discipline, and about family arguments that had split them apart years before the war. But the most shocking revelation came when Angela Raubel was finally located. Angela had fled to a small village in Austria, but she wasn't hiding from the Allies. She was hiding from someone far more dangerous, former Nazi officials who blamed the Hitler family for Germany's defeat. Death threats had been arriving weekly. Former SS officers, enraged by their fallen leader, had marked his family for elimination. Angela told Allied investigators that she feared her own countrymen more than enemy soldiers. Meanwhile, in America, the most incredible story was unfolding. Remember William Patrick Hitler, the nephew who had joined the U.S. Navy? Seaman William Patrick Hitler had served honorably in the Pacific Theater, never once revealing his true identity to his fellow sailors. His service record shows he participated in operations against Japanese forces, earning commendations for his service. But in 1946, William made a decision that would define the rest of his life. He legally changed his name to William Patrick Stewart Houston. The Hitler name would die with him, he vowed. By 1950, 5 years after the war's end, Hitler's family members had scattered to the winds. New names, new countries, new lives built on the ashes of the old world. But their stories were far from over. Because you see, carrying the Hitler name, even in secret, came with consequences that would haunt them for decades to come. Now comes the part of our story that reads like a thriller novel. The individual fates of each Hitler family member. Some tragic, some redemptive, and some that will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about guilt, family, and the burden of history. Paula Hitler made a choice that stunned everyone who knew her story. After her release from Allied detention in 1946, she returned to Austria and kept her name. That's right. While every other family member was changing identities and fleeing to distant countries, Paula Hitler moved to a small apartment in Berchtesgaden and lived openly as Adolf Hitler's sister. Local newspapers tracked her down repeatedly. She gave several interviews, always with the same message. I love my brother as a brother, but I could never understand his politics. Paula lived in poverty, working odd jobs, and receiving a small pension from the Austrian government. She never married, never had children. Neighbors reported that she would sometimes stand at her window for hours, staring at the mountains where her brother's Berchtesgaden retreat once stood. Paula Hitler died on June 1st, 1960, at age 64. She was buried in an unmarked grave in Berchtesgaden Cemetery. The local priest who performed the service later said it was the loneliest funeral he had ever conducted. Only 2 people attended, a neighbor and a reporter. Alois Hitler Jr.'s post-war story is perhaps the most surprisingly normal of all the family members. After his release from British custody in 1947, he did something remarkable. He opened a restaurant. The Corner Bistro in Hamburg became locally famous for its traditional German cuisine. But here's the incredible part. Alois never hid his cooking skills from his wartime interrogators. British intelligence files show he had actually cooked meals for his guards while in detention, and they were impressed enough to help him secure restaurant licensing after his release. For 15 years, Alois Hitler ran a successful restaurant, serving hundreds of customers who had no idea they were eating food prepared by Adolf Hitler's half-brother. He married a local woman named Hedwig and adopted her son from a previous marriage. But Alois carried secrets that ate away at him. In a 1958 letter to Paula, discovered in Austrian state archives, he wrote, Sometimes I wake up screaming his name, not in anger, but in sorrow for the brother I once knew. Alois Hitler died of a heart attack in 1956 at age 74. His restaurant remained popular, and many customers attended his funeral, still unaware of his true identity. Angela Raubel's post-war life was marked by a guilt that wasn't entirely her own. As Hitler's former housekeeper and half-sister, she had witnessed the dictator's private moments and personal habits more intimately than almost anyone. Her Allied interrogation files, declassified in 1995, revealed disturbing details about Hitler's personal life that intelligence officers found both fascinating and horrifying. Angela described her half-brother's violent mood swings, his obsession with cleanliness, and his bizarre dietary restrictions. After her release, Angela retreated to a remote farmhouse in the Austrian Alps. She raised chickens and vegetables, selling eggs at the local market under an assumed name. Neighbors knew her as Anna Reiter, a widow whose husband had died in the war. In 1949, Angela wrote a letter to American occupation authorities that was never sent. It was found among her belongings after her death. In it, she begged for permission to immigrate to Argentina, writing, "I cannot live in a country where every mountain reminds me of the evil that grew in our family." Angela died in 1949 at age 66, just 4 years after the war's end. Local records show she died of exhaustion and despair, what we might today recognize as severe depression and PTSD. Now we come to the most extraordinary story of all, William Patrick Hitler, the nephew who fought against his uncle's regime and then disappeared into the American suburbs. William had arrived in America in 1939, just months before the war began in Europe. He had actually met with his uncle Adolf in 1938, asking for help with his career. Hitler's response? He offered William a job in his propaganda ministry. William turned it down and fled to America instead. In 1944, William Patrick Hitler walked into a U.S. Navy recruitment office in New York City and enlisted under his real name. The recruitment officer initially thought it was a joke. William had to provide extensive documentation to prove his identity and undergo months of background investigation. His service record shows he was assigned to the Pacific Fleet, serving aboard a medical ship treating wounded American servicemen. Fellow sailors later recalled that William never spoke about his family and claimed to be from Ireland when asked about his accent. After the war, William Patrick Stewart Houston, his new legal name, settled in Patchogue, Long Island. He married a German-American woman named Phyllis Jean-Jacques and had 4 sons. He worked as a medical technician and later opened a blood testing laboratory. The Stewart Houston family became pillars of their community. William coached Little League Baseball, served on the school board, and was a member of the local Rotary Club. For 30 years, his neighbors had no idea they were living next to Adolf Hitler's nephew. But William carried the weight of his secret identity until his death. His sons later revealed that their father would sometimes wake up screaming in German, reliving nightmares about his uncle and the war. This brings us to one of the most remarkable family decisions in modern history. In the 1960s, William Patrick's 4 sons made a pact that would ensure the Hitler bloodline ended with them. The 4 Stewart Houston brothers, Alexander, Brian, Louis, and Howard, agreed that none of them would have children. They reasoned that the world should never again risk the possibility of another Hitler rising to power. This wasn't just a casual family agreement. They drew up legal documents and made formal vows. 3 of the 4 brothers kept their promise. Only one, Alexander, eventually married and had children, but he moved to a remote area and maintained strict anonymity. So what happened to Hitler's bloodline? Are their descendants alive today? The answer will surprise you. In 2019, French researchers conducted a comprehensive DNA analysis using samples from confirmed Hitler family graves and compared them to people living today who claim Hitler ancestry. The results were published in the Journal of Historical Genetics. They found evidence of at least 39 people currently living who share genetic markers with Adolf Hitler. These descendants are scattered across the globe, in America, Argentina, Austria, and even Australia. Most live under assumed names, and have no idea of their true heritage. Some discovered it through ancestry DNA testing and were horrified by the results. One descendant, living in Connecticut, discovered her Hitler connection in 2017 and immediately hired lawyers to legally change her entire family's names and relocate to another state. She spent over $50,000 trying to erase any connection to her infamous ancestor. But here's something most people don't know. Hitler's estate still exists, and it's still generating controversy. The Bavarian state government seized Hitler's assets after the war, including royalties from his book, Mein Kampf. Those royalties continue to generate income, nearly $100,000 per year. Several Hitler descendants have attempted to claim inheritance rights, leading to legal battles that continue today. In 2020, a woman in Argentina claiming to be Hitler's great-niece filed a lawsuit demanding her share of the estate. DNA testing proved her claim was legitimate, but German courts ruled that family members cannot inherit assets from convicted war criminals. Intelligence agencies continue to monitor Hitler descendants, not because they pose any threat, but because of ongoing historical research and the need to prevent exploitation by neo-Nazi groups. A 2018 FBI document, released through Freedom of Information requests, confirms that American intelligence services maintain a Hitler family watch list, tracking known descendants to protect them from harassment and to prevent their identities from being exploited by extremist groups. In 2021, one of William Patrick's surviving sons agreed to an anonymous interview with a documentary filmmaker. His words, spoken from behind a screen to hide his identity, were haunting. "We live normal lives, but we can never escape the shadow of that name. My children don't even know their true heritage. Maybe that's for the best." So what really happened to Hitler's family after World War II? The answer is both simpler and more complex than anyone imagined. Paula Hitler chose to live openly with her burden, dying alone and largely forgotten. Alois Hitler became a successful restaurant owner, hiding his identity behind a chef's apron. Angela Raubel retreated into isolation, consumed by guilt and despair. And William Patrick Hitler reinvented himself as an American success story, his four sons ultimately choosing to end their bloodline rather than risk another Hitler rising to power. Most of Hitler's immediate family members are now dead, buried in unmarked graves across 3 continents. But their descendants live on, ordinary people carrying an extraordinary burden, the weight of history's most infamous name. Their stories remind us that history doesn't end with the death of dictators. The consequences ripple through generations, affecting innocent people who never chose their inheritance. What do you think? Should the descendants of history's monsters be held responsible for crimes they never committed? Or do they deserve the chance to live normal lives, free from the sins of their ancestors? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this investigation as fascinating as I did, make sure to like this video and subscribe to World War Chronicles for more untold stories from the Second World War. Ring that notification bell so you never miss our deep dives into history's greatest mysteries.